Let me take you to the group that is opposing 1098. And Scott Stanzel, campaign manager for Defeat 1098, joins us here on News Talk 97.3 KIRO FM. Hey, Scott, good to talk to you this afternoon.
Nice talking with you, Dori. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Okay, I've heard from the pro-1098 people. They say, look, the state needs more money, and it just makes sense to go after the people who can most afford to pay more in taxes. What's wrong with that point of view?
Well, it's our view that if 1098 were to pass, it's just a matter of time before everybody in the state is hit with an income tax. And that's why we believe that this tax will be defeated in November. It's also why we've put together a nonpartisan coalition of Democrats, independents, Republicans to defeat this tax, because this is the wrong tax at the wrong time. And if you look at state spending, if we take their assertions that state spending is the real need here for a new tax that would tax the citizens of Washington State $1.7 billion, you look at state spending, and since the late 90s, state spending has grown in the biennium by about 65%. Mm-hmm. So there is a spending issue here, and we believe that this tax would not achieve the goals that even the proponents say it would, and we believe it would hurt our struggling economy and stop job creation and diminish the attractiveness for outside investment to come into the state of Washington. And
okay, let's break some of this down that you're talking about here. You said that you believe that this is essentially a gateway to imposing an income tax on everybody, or certainly more than it purports to be taxing. Why do you say that, and how would that happen?
Well, we believe, it's billed, as you said, as a high earners tax, but we believe it's designed to introduce a state income tax with no constitutional protections against expanding it to cover everyone in Washington. So any provision of the initiative, be it tax brackets or rates, can be amended by a simple majority of the legislature in 2 years. So it may not hit you now, but it most likely will hit you down the road.
So you're saying that if they get this in the state legislature 2 years from now, could come along and say, hey, we don't, because 2 years from now is when the financial tsunami hits the state. They've already projected an $8 billion deficit, and you're saying that the state legislature 2 years from now could say, hey, we've got this financial crisis, and we've got to put this income tax on everybody in the state, not just the high earners.
That's correct. And state legislators have shown their propensity to change these initiatives after time, be it whether they're rating dedicated funds or changing the requirements on how big of a majority they have to have in order to raise taxes like they did this year. So they've already demonstrated their willingness to change these initiatives, and we really think that this is the camel under the camel's nose under the tent.
Okay, now, and I fully believe that that's what they're working toward as well. How is this initiative, as it's currently written, constitutional? Because our state constitution says that everybody has to be taxed evenly, and there is no provision to just go after the so-called rich.
Right. And we do believe that this initiative, 1098, will face an immediate constitutional challenge. So the Supreme Court ruled in 1932, the state Supreme Court that is, that graduated income tax was unconstitutional. So if that ruling is overturned, there would be no limits on the legislature's ability to expand it.
Well, what's their argument to, because it seems so cut and dried to me that this violates the state constitution. What is the other side's argument that they believe makes this constitutional?
Well, they have written it in such a way that they believe that they're calling it actually in the law an excise tax, and so they're working to try to get around that income tax issue. But even if it were to be ruled as an excise tax, then the IRS would have problems with deductibility. So you would have a problem on the federal side, and you would end up paying more from that perspective. So,
as I understand, because the Constitution says that all property in the state, our state constitution, all property must be taxed equal. And isn't it part of their argument that your income is not your property?
Yeah, and they could,
which is a bizarre argument to make.
It is a twisted argument, and it's one that they've had to do some verbal loops, in my view, to get at. So I think it's very likely, highly likely, that this would end up in the courts, but it's our mission at Defeat 1098 to stop it from even getting there, because we want to stop it on the ballot.
Okay, but that's an uphill battle, because on the surface, this has great appeal to the masses, doesn't it? It's not going to affect me. It's going after those evil, filthy, rich people who are just exploiting all of us. And I mean, it's an easy sell if you're on the Yes campaign. It's a tax that's not going to hit 98% of you, and it's just going to go after the evil rich. How do you battle that message?
Well, actually, the most recent poll on this issue demonstrated that it's a pretty even fight, at about 46% who's favor it, 46% who oppose it, and that's in an Elway poll that just came out last week.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, in that poll, it said 70% of the people that responded thought it would be only a matter of time before everyone in the state winds up paying a state income tax. So people, if they don't want to pay a state income tax, either now or down the road, this is their opportunity to vote against it, because they may never have that chance again.
Well, here's the other thing that some legal experts have told me, how this, forget about the legislature 2 years from now saying we're going to lower the income threshold. I've also been told by some legal experts that if this initiative passes, the Supreme Court could review it, and they could say that the income tax part is allowable, but the income threshold is not, and just make it a tax on that by court decree. It could be a tax on every single person in the state. Is that a possibility?
I think all of those things are possible when it's hard. It's very hard to predict what will happen in the courts. That is a difficult task, and one that is fraught with danger from our perspective, and that's why we're trying to stop it before it ever gets to the courts. I will say this, too. The 2002 tax committee that Bill Gates Sr. Chaired recommended a flat rate tax on everyone. And they found that a graduated income tax were more volatile, say, than a sales tax. So in the past, he's been part of a body that's advocated a tax on everyone. And that's why we think this is a vehicle for them to get at a tax on everyone.
Very interesting. I've been trying many times to get Bill Gates Sr. on my show. Last week, his son just announced that he's giving the majority of his fortune to charity. And I'm wondering if Daddy has tried to encourage his son to give the majority of his fortune to government. If Daddy thinks that government is a better use of our money than us being able to use our money, I wonder if there's a family split there. I also want to know if Bill Gates Sr. has voluntarily sent a chunk of his fortune to the state government, to the state treasury, which he could do, or if he just wants this on everybody else.
Well, that would be an interesting kitchen table conversation that I'd certainly like to be on a fly on the wall for. But, the majority of the funding for the Yes on 1098 side has actually come from labor unions.
Yeah, the SEIU and
the Washington Federal State Employees Union. And so that's where their funding is actually coming from, though Mr. Gates has dedicated a lot of his money as well, $100,000 at this point, to seeing this passed. But at this point, I don't believe that his son has taken a position.
Got it. All right. Well, good talking with you, Scott. I appreciate you taking the time this afternoon. Okay. Scott Stanzel, he's with the No on 1098.